Hey everyone, in this video we are going to take care of the specific dataset number. Now in the last sprint we created a relationship table, and in order to relate any row to any row in any table to any row in any table, we need this column. Now this column is also the second half of the physical model, because if you primary key an identity and you cluster it, table 1 and table A and table B, record 1 will sit like this on the physical model, and then 2 and 2, 3 and 3, and you get this defragmentation. Now this specific dataset number will be the first key in our cluster when we start to automatically or automate the creation of those clusters, and that will cause our tables to be grouped together on the physical layer, so when we're querying that data, that page or that extent is returned, increasing our performance. So I hope you enjoy, and I will see you soon. Alright, so the first thing I have to do is actually add another column to the dataset table that I forgot to add when we were creating all these subjects. It's the specific dataset number _ source, and we created a user-defined type for this specific case. This will be where the specific dataset number is generated. It shouldn't allow nulls, but since there's data in the table, we have to do that for now. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this table. Okay, so this is a common error, and it can be resolved by an option. There is an option to allow for saving. There it is, prevent saving changes. We can just allow that, and now we can save the table. Okay, so now I'm going to create the sequence. Now the sequence is like an identity, except for on a database. So it is a create sequence syntax, and I'm going to prefix with QNC because S instead of SEQ. S is meant for synonyms. Pretty standard. It's going to be a big int. It's going to start at 1, increment by 1, no cache, and we're not going to allow it to cycle and restart, and we can save that. Now I'm going to create a cursor that will update the dataset table and actually set that in specific dataset number source column that we had just created. And I apologize if I'm moving pretty fast. We have a lot to do in this video, and I'm trying to conserve time. So this is a simple dataset cursor that we go through, and we're going to, we're going to select the specific dataset number from the sequence, and how you do that is the syntax is next value for the sequence name. And then I add over, order by, select 0. It's just a common thing I do. Most times you don't need the over statement. And then we're just going to set the specific dataset number source to the value that we got from the sequence on the dataset ID, or where that dataset ID is our cursor variable. And we have to make sure that we remove fast forward and change it to static read-only, forward-only, or else the cursor will error out, because we're modifying the table that we're using, and you can see it filled it out. So now I really don't need this code anymore. So I'm just going to close everything, and we're going to script the default, the specific dataset number default as create or as alter, because we're going to use SQL's pattern to our benefit. We're going to tokenize this script. I'm going to remove the square braces because I do not like them. We have the use database name. We see our default's null right now, and we can just replace TBL ref dataset with DataSetName, so we can use this for any table, and just add our sequence, our specific dataset number token here, so we can overwrite that token. Sometimes it just formats it in lower. So this will be our code that we dynamically execute like we do in most videos. Now we're going to have a dataset ID be the incoming variable. We'll need to get the database ID from that dataset, and then we'll need the database name for the token. We'll need the dataset name for the token. We will need the specific dataset number. For our third token, let me just format this a little bit. And actually, let me get my comments down. There we go. And then finally, we need our SQL scripts, and I'll just name this specific dataset number because this will be our base script. We're gonna get that information and then overwrite this data. So now getting the other variables are standard select statements where for the dataset ID, we need the database ID and the str name. So we'll just remove those and fill our variables. And then we're gonna query the database table. And we just need the name here. And then we need the specific dataset number. And it's going to be the specific dataset number source from the dataset table where dataset ID equals dataset ID. Actually, I already called the dataset table. I'm just going to piggyback on that call. Apologies. All right. So now, let's see, this belongs in initialize. Now we can actually create the code. So if the specific dataset number is not null, then we can run this because that means we definitely have the dataset ID. Dataset can't exist in that table without a database, so names are not nullable. I think that's good enough to actually run this script. So we're just going to replace the base script, those tokens, the database name with @database name, and then the dataset name with @dataset name. And I'm actually going to copy this specific dataset number token so I don't make any spelling errors, remove the parens, and replace it with specific dataset number. And I'm going to kind of overload this procedure and update the table that we're calling. Make sure that every record in that table has the correct specific dataset number. Instead of trying to create two procedures, because this procedure that we're making right now is going to get overwritten, it will be our default enforcer instead of a specific, this specific item. But we need the relationship table, we need definitions, we need a lot of other things, and we need to get this done before we can use the relationship table. And I think this is it for our code. So we can copy this and just create a new procedure. Let's see. I think I'll do PRC system object dataset specific dataset number update. Can remove all this temp code. I'll just declare my dataset ID since there's only one of those. Paste and replace or removes this stuff and save it. So now, once again, dataset cursor, I should have saved that code from the beginning of the video. We're just going to cursor through the dataset table and call the procedure that we just created. So we need a dataset ID, our cursor snippet, we'll fetch next into dataset ID both times. And then Control-Shift-R to refresh cache. And we're going to call the dataset specific dataset number and send it. Oh, see, this is what I was saying. We can't have local fast forward. It needs to be static read only, forward only, or forward only, read only, because we're updating the table that we're cursoring through. So if we pull any table open or query any table, we should see that the specific dataset number is set. Let's see. So I think the last thing I want to do is create a function to allow us to get the specific dataset number on the fly. And we're going to send the function a dataset name. We're going to return UDT generic key. We're going to call this get specific dataset number for name. So the objective is send in a dataset name and get back the dataset, the specific dataset number. So we're just going to query the dataset table on the name and get that specific number. Now we shouldn't have any duplicate names in our system because we are actually modeling our system. There's no need to repeat tables. So let's just keep that in mind. If you are repeating tables, you might have some problems, but it should be okay. And then we're going to return it. And that's it. So thank you very much for watching this video. Now we have our other half of the physical model for the cluster indexes, and we are ready to start utilizing the relationship table. Remember, like this video and YouTube will recommend it to other users in our industry, and subscribe to support me. Thank you very much again, and I will see you next time.